Hey guys, this is Collin Moshman for Postflopizer, and today we're going to look at how to use this powerful new software to analyze hands from progressive knockout tournaments. And what that means is we're trying to find out how to play GTO poker so that no other player can exploit us. And now, not only can we do that with cash games or with normal tournaments, we can even do it with progressive knockouts. And I'm going to show you exactly how with Postflopizer in this video. So to begin with, let's take a look at a hand from a bounty tournament. And we can toggle nice and easily in the upper left from ICMIZER to Postflopizer and back. And so the hand we're going to look at is from a $33 progressive knockout, where hero opens in early position, and only the hijack calls. So on this queen eye flop, we c-bet about half pot, get called. We follow up with a half pot or so turn c-bet, get called once again. Now here with 4 cards to a strain, most players, including myself, are going to tend to slow down with the check here. Maybe we think that our opponent is going to bluff here. You know, we can check call and induce bluffs. Maybe we would check fold against a tighter opponent. But typically this would be a spot to check. Now the question is this actually correct? Particularly in a progressive knockout. Maybe what's better here is to go ahead and jam for about pot, and that way if our opponent has a hand such as Queen X, which he actually does in this hand, we don't give him the opportunity to check back. So when he does call with a worse hand, we gain a tremendous extra amount by winning his bounty, and we can test hypotheses like these with Postflopizer. So let's go ahead and do that and take a look at this hand, particularly both players' actions on the river. So the first thing we need to do is to load up the hand, and that's going to be really easy. So all we have to do is you can click edit stacks and put this in manually. But if you're going from a hand history like we are here, super easy to do just by clicking on paste hand. So that's going to be step number 1. And notice here the flop is input correctly, so that's perfect. And you want to have the correct structure. So you want to have the right buy-in, payouts, number of players. If there is a structure that matches that perfectly, that's great. If not, you can just create a new one. So if you click here, you can put in all of the parameters, and that's going to include all of the payouts as well as the buy-in. So put stuff in. And in this particular instance, I have a custom structure loaded called $33 Challenge PKO. And if you are at final table, then that's going to be plenty. If you're not at a final table, you want to select MTT mode. And MTT mode just means that you're playing a multi-table tournament and you're not at the final table. So we're going to select that. And we want to make sure the average stack at your table is correct. So here it's 7613. And you want to have the right number of players remaining. So this particular tournament starts off with 337 players. And if you don't know how many are left, you can estimate that by dividing total chips in play by the table's average stack. So here with 337 players in at the start, there's a 5,000 chip starting stack. So that's 1.685 million total chips divided by 7613 average at this point in the tournament. And that means that there are going to be around 221 players left. So that'll give us a good estimate. So we put that in, and then the average stack here is 7613. We have this approximate total number of chips in play. And the bounties are automatically loaded correctly. MTT mode selected. So everything here is looking very good. And there's only one other thing we need to do at this point, which is to put in ranges for the players. So let's begin with the early position guy. You can give them any range that you think is accurate. If it's you, you can put in the range you would actually be opening. Here I might take advantage of the save range feature and just load up this early position opening range. So we have the hero opening mid-high pocket pairs, suited broadways, everything here. I'm going to click OK. And what about the hijack? We also have a saved range for him. And notice here I've used the bucket selection tool to pretty heavily discount premium hands, which we think he would 3-bet. So queens plus, ace king. And you can customize these however you want. So for example, with a hand like pocket tens, maybe you think that 50-50, he's flatting versus 3-betting. So you can make the bucket selection tool give any percents you want. And we give him a lot more of these speculative hands, including lower suited aces, 7-6 suited. So we're going to have this be his range. Now, at this point, you can click calculate. You're off to the races. It's that simple. But I do want to show you guys a couple of the other things you can do if we are to now click on Advanced tab. So because this is tournament, while we're looking at this hand, you would never need to toggle from tournament to cash, but you will get some new features if you go from quick to advanced. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, the first thing here is we'll see in green this section. And what this is saying is these are the actual actions that took place in the hand as distinct from the presets. These presets here I have as all 60% bets, which are not the actions that these players took. And so you can do a couple of things. One is if I want to get rid of the actual actions and go back to these presets, I can just delete that. I can put them back in very easily by clicking paste. And then in the tree preview and editor, we see the actual actions with green. So if it doesn't have green, that means it's going to correspond to one of these presets. If it does have green, that means it corresponds to what the player actually did. And you can delete either one. Very easy to do that within the tree preview and editor. So here, for example, if I want to focus only on the sizing option of what hero did, I could delete this. So we had a bet, a call. This took us to the turn. We'll delete here. We have another bet and a call. And then either way, the only option is we're going to exceed the all-in threshold and go ahead and jam river. So now that we have done this, let's go ahead. We're going to click calculate, and I'll just make sure that I still have these ranges incorrectly. And we're going to take a look at the GTO analysis of this hand. And here we go. So the first thing we can look at is the flop has been dealt, and the question is how wide should we c-bet? And on this particular flop, we c-bet very wide 85% of the time. And this makes sense. We're on a fairly tight range pre-flop. We have our opponent covered, and we're eligible to win his bounty. So we're going to be c-betting a lot here. I like this this result. And we can see on the left the hands that we should c-bet, and we can hover over to get suits. Here with pocket kings, we're going to be c-betting almost always 95% of the time. And we can then take a look here at the equity that these hands have against our opponent's range. Combine that with strategy if we want. So for example, here with our pocket kings, this hand has 76% equity against our opponent's range. And because it's in orange, which means bet, we see both the equity as well as the fact that we're supposed to bet with this hand. Now here on the right, we can hover over and see what to do with specific hand categories. So with top pair, we kicker. These are the hands that fall in that category. We're mainly going to be betting them. And we can drill down even better in made hand matrix. So let me give an example. Suppose that we have missed. We just have a high card. So in that case, what should we do? Well, we see that with high card, with most hands, high card hands, we're going to bet. And the main hands that we're going to be checking some of the time, we have this 27% green, are going to be ones that have backdoor straight draw. So if we hover over here into the intersection of high card and backdoor straight draw, we see these hands such as ace jack, ace 10, that are going to have a higher percent of check that have some kind of combination of ability to improve and high card strength. So another thing we can do here is we can look at what I call the tail of the tape that puts these two ranges against each other. And we notice here that this player, the opener UTG +1, is on the left. The flatter is going to be on the right. And so the early position raiser has higher equity. He has a 52 to 48% roughly equity edge. He has the higher EV. And he has more sets, more overpairs, more of these strong hands in his range. So let's take a look now. And assuming that we are now the hijack who is flatted. Facing this bet, what should he do? And the answer, interestingly, is he's supposed to have no raising range. He will either fold or call. And because he's facing a half-pot c-bet with such a wide range, he does call quite a bit, including with all of his very strong hands. So definitely an interesting result here. And what we can do is we have him call. And because we've already loaded this hand, Postflopizer is going to know the turn. We see that up here. We also see that as part of the line navigation. And we'll begin, let me show turn runouts in 1 second, but if we look at once the turn is dealt, we see here that Hero is supposed to really slow down at this stage. He's now only betting about 1/3 of his hands. And we can take a look. So we see, for example, that hands that he's going to be checking are a lot of his ace-high hands. Again, we can drill down even more on those under the made hand matrix. A lot of his top pair hands, interestingly, he's checking. So perhaps a little bit surprising here. Now, possibly the reason why we're checking more is because this is a bad turn card for us. And on different turn cards, we're going to be firing that turn c-bet a lot more or a lot less. So a very cool way to do that is with the turn runouts tab. So let's take a look from the perspective of the early position raiser. So what turn cards are going to give him the highest EV? So what he likes to see, so a king, the 4 kings are going to be the absolute best cards for him. And then meanwhile, the worst cards for him are going to be these mid cards here. 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s. The actual 9 of diamonds is one that he c-bets a very low percent. If this turn card had instead been the king of spades, he would be following up with not just high flop c-bet, but even higher turn c-bet. So super sensitive to the actual turn card. And again, very cool to see that for either player. So if we can do the hijack, and that should just flip these here. So the hijack loves to see 10s, 9s, 7s, 8s. And the cards they want to see are going to be based on their ranges. So with the 9 of diamonds, we bet. And what should the hijack do? Now he is going to have all 3 ranges in play. He's going to have jamming range, calling range, and folding ranges. And so he's going to be jamming a lot of his very strong hands, sets, 2 pairs, and then some of the time air to balance. And then most mid-strength hands, he's going to flat. If he has the nuts, he's going to be flatting. So you can take a look at what he's supposed to do with all these combos. Now, we saw that in the actual hand, he is queen jack suited. So if we click here, we can take a look and we can see what he's supposed to do as a function of suit. Now, suits do matter because of the fact that, there is the flush draw out there. And so there are 3 possible suits with the queen of hearts part of the flop. And if he had queen jack of diamonds, he's supposed to semi-bluff shove always. This is just going to be a pure shove. And with clubs and spades, he's going to make a mix here. So most of the time, he's supposed to just call. And the rest of the time, he can jam. He's never supposed to fold. So there we go. Queen jack of diamonds, of course, is both, I call it a semi-bluff. He actually has top pair, but the very strong draw to go along with it. So that draw is the difference between calling and jamming. So let's go ahead now and navigate to the river. In the actual hand, there's the bet of 1240 and the call. River is dealt. And again, the program Postflopizer knows what the river is because of the hand history that we have pasted. And so the first thing we'll take a look at is what should we do? Let's go ahead and solve this. So we have pocket kings. And the question here is, are we supposed to check or jam? Those are the only options. So I'm going to select this and go over here. And it is going to be some kind of a mix. We see that right away. And with our actual king of spades, king of diamonds, we're going to be mainly checking there. So Hero makes a correct check. He is supposed to check here the majority of the time. And it wouldn't be crazy to jam. So we can see that overall, close to 50% of the time, we are going to be moving all in. And we're not going to make a significant mistake either way, which is very good to know. So once we have checked, I would assume that our opponent is supposed to jam a pretty polarized range. And this is what we see here. If he has a straight, a set, two pair, over pair, some of the time he jams those for value. Anything in the middle, so any top pair, strong pair hands, he's going to check back and show down. And then he has a bluffing range consisting of hands that are second pair and worse, where some percent of the time he jams all of those. And we can again take a look at river runouts. So here, if we want to do this from the perspective of UTG, probably again are expecting him to want these high cards. And sure enough, he wants a king or an ace most of all. It's going to be the opposite for the hijack, who's going to want more of these mid cards again. And our river c-bet percent is going to be very dependent on what the river is. So it looks like it's never going to be super high, but it'll be about 60 with these kings and down to about a quarter of hands with these tens. Interestingly, also, one thing we can look at is suppose that Hugh does check the pocket kings and faces a shove. Should he call off? So in order to check that out, we're just going to navigate. We'll click check, all in, and we can take a look at what hands we're supposed to call or fold. When we do that, we see that we're mainly going to be folding pocket kings. And notice also that it's not always just the better hands call. We notice that with kings, we're going to be folding most of the time. We're going to be folding 77% of the time. But it looks like ace-queen suited is way more blue. With ace-queen suited, we're going to be calling the majority of the time. And that just pertains to blockers. So a big source of our opponent's hands that contain a 6 is going to be ace-6 suited. And if we hold ace-queen suited, it is less likely that he can have a 6 suited. So these blockers are going to be super relevant to our strategy. And this is another thing that the program shows us. So all in all, this is going to be an awesome way to analyze your progressive knockouts. It combines quote unquote normal strategy with ICM factors, bounty factors, and puts together the big picture, showing you your full strategy, combining everything. So this is both super cool, surprisingly easy to use, and a lot of fun. So thanks very much for watching. This has been Collin Moshman for Postflopizer.